Hey everyone, I'm Kiwi, and today I'm looking at a game that I have fond memories of as a child. A spooky, scary game with wizards, skeletons, zombies, and all manner of ghoulish beasts. The game I'm looking at today is none other than Medievil. Now the first real scary thing you may notice about this game are the PS1 polygons. Those PS1 polygons can sure be terrifying at times. Medievil is a story about the fallen knight Sir Daniel Fortescue and his second chance at becoming the true hero everyone believes him to be. The game is set in the mythical kingdom of Gallowmere, where an evil wizard Zarok, who I have to point out kinda looks like a drag queen, is waging war on the kingdom. In steps Sir Daniel, who leads the charge against Zarok's forces, but is killed pretty much instantly by an arrow. Despite this setback, the kingdom of Gallowmere is triumphant in defeating Zarok, and Sir Daniel is somehow remembered as a hero. 100 years pass and Zarok is back, and boy is he pissed. He casts a spell and resurrects his army back from the dead, and steals the souls of the people of Gallowmere. But this is where Zarok made his biggest mistake, as he also brings back to life Sir Daniel Fortescue. And all Daniel wants to do is defeat Zarok and finally become the hero he is destined to be. How do I properly describe what kind of game Medievil is? It's an adventure, hack and slash platformer? You control Sir Daniel and guide him through each level, killing enemies and navigating any tricky platforming sections. And when I say tricky, I really mean unnecessarily difficult, horribly unforgiving, and makes you so mad you want to throw the game out the window and smash it with it. This is a good time to mention the controls. Medievil was one of the first PlayStation games that used the analog control sticks, and they're pretty stiff. I also used them as my excuse for a lot of my deaths I had during the game. But honestly, using the analog sticks is the only way to play Medievil, because using the D-pad is a real nightmare. Before Christmas. Get it? Because they're both skeletons. So the earlier levels of the game are pretty short, and not very difficult, with Sir Daniel starting off in a graveyard. Because you know, it's a game about skeletons and monsters and stuff. You start off with 300 HP, and that seems like a lot. And in the beginning of the game, it is a lot, with enemies being pretty easy to dispatch and dealing pitiful damage to Sir Daniel. Naturally, as you progress through the game, the difficulty level should also increase. That's called a difficulty curve. Despite this, Medieval's difficulty curve doesn't feel progressive, it's more forced and pushed onto players. And this makes the game feel a lot harder and unfair than it needs to be. Yes, there are a lot more enemies in later levels, but that's expected in many games, and that's not the problem in Medievil. The problem is that a few of the newer enemies that show up in the later levels of the game do a lot more damage than you'd expect, and all of a sudden Sir Daniel's 300 HP feels a lot less generous than originally thought. I have to say, Sir Daniel is pretty squishy and really vulnerable throughout the game. Besides the fact that most enemies seem to hit like tanks, falling off ledges or into water costs a whole life bottle. And with the questionable platforming of the game, combined with the fact that you're constantly wrestling the camera as it struggles to keep up with Sir Daniel, you're going to die a lot. Now, don't think that just because there's lots of deaths in the game, that the developers decided to lend a hand to the players by making autosaves, checkpoints, or handy respawns. Because that's not what Medieval is all about. If you run out of life bottles and die, guess what? It's game over. You have to go all the way back to the title screen and load your game from the last time you saved, and replay the level from the beginning. So here's a tip-top piece of advice: save after every level. There are many times that I would make it to an end of a level only to have a boss battle spring up and catch me off guard, which of course always ends well. But you know, I don't entirely dislike this feature about Medievil, because it really makes players think about what they're about to do. For example, in some more forgiving games, you can mindlessly throw yourself at enemies and try downright stupid things without fear of consequence. But in Medievil, you really have to think long and hard about what you're about to do, and whether it's worth replaying the last 20 to 30 minutes of the game. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I think most games of today could really learn a lesson from older games about how to punish and reward players. One thing's for sure, you won't run out of sweet toys to play with and destroy enemies. So Daniel has a plethora of weaponry at his disposal, ranging from a magical sword and crossbow to hammers and lightning. And even, chicken drumsticks? Gallowmere KFC. Killer fried chicken. So Daniel obtains these awesome and not so awesome weapons from collecting chalices from each level and meeting up with old friends from battles past. So Daniel can also hold a shield with most weapons, but honestly, the shields are pretty useless. Apart from the fact that the shields are really flimsy, you can only use them when you find them in the level, and once they're gone until you can find another one. During each level, a hidden chalice can be obtained by defeating enough enemies and collecting their souls to gain 100% completion. After completing a level and grabbing the chalice, you will be transported to the Hall of Heroes, where Sir Daniel can chat away to his old friends who lend their words of wisdom to old Dan, and give him either a special weapon or some sort of valuable item. Trust me, you're going to want to grab each and every chalice from all the levels of the game. But a bit more on that later. It's around this time of the game where my eyes are hurting from staring at those PS1 polygons, and I think of taking a break only to start one last level and be greeted with what I have to say is glorious cutting edge cutscenes for the time. While the graphics and polygons of the game have a very unpolished, rough and ready feel, the cutscenes are right up there for the late 90s era of gaming, and is why I have to push through the pain just so I can get more of those glorious kick-ass cutscenes. The voice acting throughout the game is pretty good as well. You really get the sense that people lending their voice to the game really got into the project and enjoyed their work. The characters seem to really catch the right tense of whatever situation Sir Daniel is currently in, but still have the personality to splash in some well-timed humour along the way. There are too many cases in gaming of terrible voice acting, but Medieval isn't one of them. Well, maybe apart from Sir Daniel, who sounds like he's voiced by Sylvester Stallone.
It ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that Medieval has cheat codes. But unlike most other games with cheat codes, Medievals are incredibly unfair, and instead of making the game more enjoyable, they really just ruin it. I mean, with the press of a button you can have the chalice from any level, or even complete the level itself. But if you're really thinking about doing this, then what's the point in playing? There's just one thing that bothers me when playing through Medieval, and that's the fact that it's not that scary. I mean, it's not as scary as I remembered it to be. Admittedly, it's been a long time since I last played Medieval, but I don't know. I'm just a little disappointed. Maybe, just maybe, I can make this game a little bit more scary for everyone. Hit it.
Scary skeletons and shivers down your spine. Shrieking skulls will shock your soul, seal your doom tonight. Spooky, scary skeletons speak with such a screech. You'll shake and shudder in surprise when you hear these zombies shriek.
Anyway, back to the actual story at hand. And Sir Daniel has fought his way across the kingdom of Gallowmere, defeating all manner of Zarok's beasts and monsters along the way. It's finally time for the big one, the grand finale. It's time to confront Zarok. Zarok's boss battle starts off with him summoning his personal undead army to protect him and slay Sir Daniel. And this is where I hope you persevered through the bad platforming, camera and controls, and tried to complete the game to the best of your abilities. Remember when I said you really need to collect all of the hidden chalices throughout the game? Well, this is where you need them. So Daniel summons his own undead army to fight against Zarok's, but the number of chalices you collected corresponds to the number of soldiers that will fight by your side. Using the item Good Lightning, so Daniel can help his own soldiers by restoring their health at the expense of your own. Draining your own health to give to your allies is a pretty risky strategy, and can take a few tries and a bit of playing around to get right. But not to worry, after the battle, you get a life bottle back for every one of your soldiers that survived the fight. Next up is Zarok's champion fighter. Yeah, this horse guy. Honestly, he's not very hard at all. Simply run around in circles away from him until he charges at you, and then smack him back to the underworld with your magical sword.
Right then, that Finally, it's time, the moment we have all been waiting for. Zorok's added minions to hide behind, and it's down to just the two of you. Zorok transforms himself into some lizard dragon monster thing, and yeah, he's actually a hard boss fight. So many times I play a game and they build up the evil villain, only to have a lackluster boss fight. But I was pleasantly surprised at the difficulty of the final boss fight. I mean, I died a lot, but after a while, and a bit of trial and error, I worked out how to vanquish the evil Zorok. Simply run away from him until he stands up on his hind legs, and then beat the heck out of him with your sword, as this is the only time during the fight that he's actually vulnerable. And there we have it. You have finally vanquished Zorok, and freed the kingdom and the people of Gallowmere from his evil reign. After defeating Zorok, you get a cutscene showing the kingdom of Gallowmere returning to normal, and our hero, Sir Daniel, returning to his crypt and going back to sleep. But remember, I did say those chalices are pretty important. If you've collected all of the chalices, you will be treated to a special scene that shows Sir Daniel partying with all his buddies and finally rejoicing in the fact that he has earned his place in the Hall of Heroes.
So there we have it. Medieval was over 15 years old now, and I gotta say, it hasn't aged very well. The game came out at the end of the PlayStation's life cycle, and you can just tell a lot of sleepless days and nights went into polishing the game. Despite all its flaws, I really like this game. I'm glad I played it again. It's great to have a bit of nostalgia. For anyone who grew up in the PlayStation era, the golden days of gaming, I definitely recommend giving Medieval another try. You can buy the remake on the PSP, and they've fixed a few things on it. It looks a lot better. My final rating for Medieval and our old mate Sir Daniel is a 5 out of 10. Hey guys, thanks for watching my video. If you like this video, why not share it around with all your friends and tell them about this little awesome flapping kiwi. Wait a minute. Yeah, that kind of works. If you want to see more of my videos, there's a big red shiny button for that, and who doesn't like shiny stuff? You can also follow me on Facebook and Twitter for video updates and a few laughs here and there. Thanks guys, have a good one.